The senator from Oklahoma.
Mr. President, we're getting a lot of redundancy around here, but it's worth it. You know, I've been sitting here for several hours now, listening to my colleagues. I don't recall in the 25 years I've been here of seeing this happening over and over again, and everything that is said is so significant. Because, you know, when the senator from Alaska talked about the fact that we're all in this together, you know, we are. And things were going well for a while. I'm actually gonna, I think, end with a little bit of an optimism right now, and I may be the only one doing that, because I think something's gonna happen tonight. I think it has to happen tonight. We don't have the luxury of waiting. Now, I've never seen a crisis like this. We're not used to dealing with crises. Gosh, we've been through wars. We've been through things that we've considered to be a crisis. This is a different dimension. We're talking about people, you know, who are dying. You know, coronavirus, you know, we all know where it came from. Wuhan in China. It's caused global panic. And by the way, they call it a pandemic. There's a reason for that, because this isn't something that's just happening in the United States of America. This is happening all over the world, everywhere. No one's immune. And it's something that we don't have a cure for right now. You know, when the senator from Indiana kept using the word emergency, this is an emergency. It's an emergency unlike any that we've seen so far. I mean, it's something that's highly contagious, something that we can't do anything about. No one is immune. As of Sunday, according to the World Health Organization, there are 292,000 cases globally and almost 13,000 deaths. Let me put that in a different perspective, because I have had the honor in the last several days, and I'm talking about including the weekend, of talking to people in Oklahoma. And I've talked to, I think this morning, we talked to every single radio, television, and newspaper in the state. And I always start my speeches out to make sure everyone understands why this is not anything that we've done before, why it's so significant, because the contagious, and I explained to people, if you take, today's the 23rd, let's take the 22nd and the 21st. If you go back to the 21st, or let's say the 20th of March, that was last Friday, we had at that time 218 cases, 210,000 cases that were known. They've been contaminated. 2 days later, it was 322,000. Now, look at the ones who have died. On the 20th, that was yesterday, that was Sunday, 8,800 people died. But 2 days before that, it was 13,714. Now, that's globally. Look at here in the United States of America. In 2020, it was 10,500 people who contacted it. And then just 2 days later, it was 31,000. It tripled in 2 days. That's what we're facing right now. On the deaths, they tripled in the same thing. 150 deaths on March 20th, 390 deaths on the 22nd, 2 days later. Now that puts it in a category. We've never had anything like that to talk about. And people, you know, the reason I do that, and when I'm talking to people in Oklahoma, it's like a lot of people, and I've been in this position before, when it looked like we're overreacting, we looked like we're creating a crisis, something that hasn't happened before. Well, in this case, this is a crisis, and it's important. There are a lot of people around who are thinking, well, you know, this is kind of manufactured, it's not this big of a deal. In this case, it is. So at the same time, we have thousands of Americans that are losing their jobs. You know, we've been listening to this on the floor for a long period of time, and sometimes it's important to be redundant, to talk about these things. The people who are being forced to shut down without any sense when they might reopen. I had, you're spared probably 15 minutes or so of the examples that I had in my state of Oklahoma, bakeries and others. The senator from Indiana did a good job, and I think that would be unnecessary to go over all of that. We all have those stories. There's not a member of this Democrat or Republican in this body who have not had these experiences and could talk about the experiences. And so we started working. This is going to sound pretty phony when I say this, but I was so proud, and I talked about how proud I was of the Democrats, because until just yesterday, we were all working together. And, you know, we're having our meetings. I was with Mitch McConnell, and he was showing the progress that we're having, and the Democrats were cooperating. We really thought really good things were going to happen. We really believed that. And so we've been working around the clock, and the bipartisan negotiations, the relief that this weekend substantial progress was being made on a comprehensive phase 3. Now, let's keep in mind, this is phase 3 we're talking about now. This is the one that I anticipate tonight we'll vote successfully on it. We have to do it, because if we don't do it, people are going to die. This is not like, you know, it's going to cost so much money if it's, or some people are going to be inconvenienced. People are dying. So we had these bipartisan negotiations, and I thought we were doing great work. While the senator has been working here on solutions to this crisis, the Democrat House has been on recess. I'm not really concerned. If they feel they can do that, that's fine. But that didn't stop the Speaker of the House. And this is where the problem came. See, everything was great until last night. And up until the vote time, we were going to vote at 6 o'clock last night. And we thought we were going to be successful in that vote at 6 o'clock last night. What we didn't know is that the Speaker came back, even though they're on recess, and she threw a wrench into everything that we're doing, all the bipartisan talks. She came to town and decided to make this a partisan exercise. House Democrats are now demanding the far left wish of radical policies be included in otherwise a bipartisan agreement. And I think what their feeling is we're going to spend all this money. We got to get everything in there. If it has nothing to do with the crisis, if it has nothing to do with the virus, then we want it. This is the time to do it. And so the idea was they wanted to spend more. And I think the senator from Indiana did a good job of talking about some of the provisions that we're talking about. But I'm going to ask, is there anybody out there right now who's a conservative? Is there anyone out there who's really kept track of what kind of spending we're talking about here? I've never seen anything like it. The spending, remember phase 1, that was the $8.3 billion emergency supplemental. That was for state and local responses, testing kits, and that's fine. People understood that. That was $8.3 billion, phase 1. Phase 2 came along, and by the way, I have to admit that was the one phase I voted against for this reason. Oklahoma is a little different than a lot of other states. We have a larger number of small businesses in Oklahoma than most other states have. And they're the ones that we've been talking to. We've been talking to because they're going to be recognizing, after all the efforts they've made in their careers and what they've done, they were going to go out of business. And so one of the things that they said that they had to be corrected was found in phase 2. In phase 2, it says there that when they mandate small business do things like paid leave and other expenditures, that's fine for them to go ahead and do that if the federal government is going to refund the expenses for that. And they were going to do it, but not for several weeks. And so our position was, those of us who had a lot of small businesses, our position was that, we want to make sure that when phase 3 comes, that we have a provision in there that will change that, so that if in the event that you end up having to pay for mandated things, paid leave and other things for your employees, that's great. It's great that you're doing it, because there's no other way in this crisis we're in the middle that they can do it. But they're going to change it. And so in this thing that we're going to be voting on hopefully tonight, and I think we are, it's going to change it so that they'd be paid to be reimbursed when that time came. Now, those who are conservatives out there, I want you to keep track of what we're talking about here. And you kind of get a pencil and paper out, write these things down. I want you to know, what we're talking about. The total amount of this phase 3 is going to be somewhere around $1.6 Trillion. That's a T we're talking about, not billion. This is a trillion. And if you look at the things that are in there, like the major problems in the corrections that were made in phase 2, that's part of this that's going on. The small businesses, $350 billion, write it down, add it up as we go along here, $350 billion, and that is to take care of some of the problems that came out that weren't addressed in phase 2. We're talking about loans of up to $10 million to individuals through 2020. All employers, that would be employers up to 500 employees are eligible for this. Now, that means that the repayment of these are loans, but that's going to be delayed for 1 year. We don't have to pay back a portion of the loan, but most of that would have to be paid back. But still, that's money, that's $350 billion. Healthcare provisions. All right, we have $75 that go to hospitals, $75 billion that goes to hospitals, healthcare providers throughout the country, and these are for mostly the larger hospitals. Then you have a smaller amount, $275 million, that would expand services to rural hospitals. Now, in the state of Oklahoma, we have a lot of rural hospitals. A lot of our rural hospitals have gone under. I can remember one time back when Bill Clinton was the president. We had this great thing, and all my conservative friends were voting to support this, and this was a budget balance amendment that would bring the deficit down, but it was doing it on the backs of rural hospitals. At that time, I was ranked as the most conservative member of the United States Senate, and I voted against it. All my conservative friends said, wait a minute, how can you do that? We can do that because we have to have, in the state of Oklahoma, take care of our rural hospitals. That's in there, $275 million. Add it up, write it down. $3.5 billion, that's for vaccine development. You know, that's what has to be done. We've got to find a cure for this thing. They're doing it every day. You hear new ideas that are coming along. Is it the same thing that can be done for malaria? Is it the same thing that can be done for other problems? And again, but the cost is there. We're going to have to do that. That's $3.5 billion. Then there's a $2 billion item that's for a national security stockpile. How many people knew that there's such a thing as a national security stockpile? They don't know. You know, I'm a member of the United States Senate. I can't even tell you where it is. And the reason I can't is it's classified. People are not supposed to know where it is. But nonetheless, that there are things like masks, gowns, ventilators, and that type of thing. And it's a smaller amount, only $2 billion, but write it down and put it in there. Then there's the $500 billion. That's the support for individuals. This is the one that I hear mostly about from conservatives. So conservatives, listen carefully. There's going to be a cash payment to individuals of $1,200. $1,200. Here's a check for $1,200. Now, that would be for people in categories where they were not wealthy people. But if they're married, it wouldn't be $1,200. It'd be $2,400. That's per individual. If they have kids, for each kid, it'd be $500 additional. So that amount is out there, and that's a part of this thing that a lot of people, and particularly conservatives, look at and they don't like. But see, this is different. This is different than anything else we've done before. We're trying to survive right now. People are dying every day. I hope I don't have to go ahead and repeat what we started out with on how many people are dying every day. Unemployment benefits. Think of the cost of that, 39 weeks of unemployment benefits for the coronavirus job losses. And that's in addition to that, they have benefits. They've increased by $600 a week. Now, usually that's the states that pay for it. The states can't do it. My state of Oklahoma, we have a great governor in Oklahoma, Governor Stitt, and yet he's not able to do that because we never anticipated the expenses that we're going to have. We've never anticipated what's happened to our income, the revenues that come into the state that we've always expected, and since statehood in Oklahoma, which wasn't that long ago by comparing to other states. That's something that we know the cost of, and we've never had to have the loss of revenue in the state of Oklahoma like we're having today. Never happened. Unemployment benefits, 39 weeks of unemployment benefits for the job losses on coronavirus. Student loans that we're talking about there on the loss of on unemployment benefits, $600 a week. As I say, normally that's paid for by the state, but not in this case. Emergency loans for distressed industries in states, $500 billion in total. Now, this is where, and people are talking about, the speaker right before me talked about coming here in an empty airplane. I came in on Monday, a week ago. Yeah, a week ago today. And there was only 14 people on a 737 airplane. And obviously, that's something that can't continue. And so we have that, and then we also have to take care of the cargo people. So it's $50 billion for passenger air and $8 billion for cargo air. Now, and I say this because I want you to keep adding this stuff up. And then you have another figure, $17 billion for national security firms. And then that leaves about $425 billion for the Treasury if they determine that something has been overlooked. And so they could take care of that. Now, I say this, and I started this out with saying I want the conservatives in America to be listening, because as of now, GovTrack had me down as the most conservative member of the United States Senate. So I want you people out there who've been adding this up to realize that even I here, with that background, are saying we're dealing with something we've never been dealt with before. And so as we look at, we see the tax credits for solar and some of these things that were a part of the liberal agenda. This is something that is going on, and that's what we're dealing with right now. Everything was great until last night. And we were making great headway. And I was complimenting the Democrats and the cooperation that we had. And we can get that back again. But this temporary thing that came in, where all of a sudden you have the Speaker of the House looking at her liberal agenda and saying, hey, there's a lot of money out there. I've got to get mine. Let's get in line and do that. And so we have, they want money for emission standards. What's that got to do with the virus? It means nothing. It has nothing to do with it. It's not what Americans want, and these things have nothing to do with the crisis. So I have to say that Pelosi is going to have to wake up and take this seriously and stop playing political games. And and that's got to happen now. It's got to happen tonight. We don't have time. You stop and calculate every day that we leave, how many people are dying during that time. We've never been faced with this before. So it's time for the political games to quit, and they want us to work together in this package. I think this is what we are going to be doing. So for the last few weeks, I've been complimenting the Senate Democrats for the efforts that they're making, and all that happened, came to a halt last night. I've been saying this is a crisis where Democrats and Republicans are putting political policy and politics aside. That's what's going to have to happen, but it's got to happen. Not if we're lucky next week, it has to happen tonight. And it wasn't until 6 o'clock last night that Senate Democrats were fully cooperating until that happened. Now, that came across pretty quick. And let me make one comment. It hadn't been said enough. I know there's a lot of hate Trump people out there. You know, I see them all the time. And I love the guy. He's done a great job. If you stop and think about what he has done in this country, and a lot of people were trying to build a case to some of the hate Trump people that he didn't move on this quick enough. Well, he did. This whole thing happened in January, and the first thing he did was stop the traffic coming into this country from China. He did it. He didn't sit around and wait. He did it immediately. Then he declared an emergency. All of these things he did immediately. He had the daily press conferences. I hope people are watching that, because he's sitting back and having the top medical people in America be talking about the problems that we're having. And so now we have, and this is kind of good news, because we started this thing with the best economy we've had in my lifetime. And you know, even those individuals who are the hate Trump people have to realize that this is the economy is the best economy that we've had. And he did it for a couple of ways that he did it. First of all, the big tax cut. There are two things that caused this. One was the tax cut, and I have a reason for bringing this up right now at the conclusion of my remarks, and that is that when we had the tax cut, it wasn't a Republican idea, it was a Democrat idea. That was John Kennedy. He was president in 1964. And what did he say? He said, you know, with the Great Society coming on, we've got to get more revenue. We've got to get more revenue, and the best way to increase your revenue is to decrease the marginal tax rates. And he did it, and it worked. And unfortunately, he died and could not reap the benefits of that success. So the revenues came in rapidly at that time. Now, other efforts for reducing taxes have been successful too, but the reason the one of this president, President Trump, was that he coupled that with doing away with the over-regulations. And I can remember mine. I was very happy that mine was the first bill that he signed. It was a regulation. It was put together back during the previous administration. It said if you're a domestic oil or gas company and you are competing for business with China or somebody else, you have to give them your whole playbook on how you calculated your. Well, that was giving a distinct advantage. It was part of the war on fossil fuels that this president had at that time. And anyway, so when this new president was elected, I went ahead and passed a bill to repeal that regulation. So the over-regulations, that's what made it very successful. He's appointed right now 190 new conservative judges. People who are not conservatives, people who don't really feel that strongly about the Constitution, they're not excited about that. 192 conservative judges. We haven't had that many judges in the first term of a president in the history of this country. And then, including, of course, 2 judges of the United States Supreme Court. Pro-Israel. You know, a lot of people don't like Israel. They're sympathetic with others. But how many presidents have said that we want to move the capital of Israel to Jerusalem? Yeah, he's the one who has done it. So we've rebuilt the military. How many people know this? I chair the committee that's called the Senate Armed Services Committee. I have the responsibility of trying to get us rebuilt because we lost during the Obama years, the last 5 years of Obama. He actually reduced the amount of money for our defense by 25%. It's never happened before. So I say this because we now have a great advantage. We're going to correct this thing. I think it's going to happen tonight. I'm really optimistic it will, because if it doesn't, people are going to die. People are dying right now. And when that happens, we're going to go back, when we get this thing rebuilt and we get beyond the crisis that we have all talked about today, that we're in the middle of right now. When that happens, we're going to go back and we will be thanking God that we started this whole thing with one of the best economies we've ever had. So I really believe tonight, you know, when we're looking at the fact of what's happening every day, and I'm not going to go back and repeat it, but we know what's happening, the numbers of people that are dying on a daily basis. Every day that we put this off, people are dying. So with that reason, I really think right now, somewhere in the Capitol, in a room, we've got Democrats and Republicans that are going to come to some kind of an agreement. I don't care when it is. It can be midnight. It can be any time. It's got to happen. We are out of time. It is a crisis. We don't have the luxury of time. It's going to have to be done. It's going to have to be done tonight. With that, I yield the floor.